Dr. Mara Levin had been practicing trauma psychology for 12 years, and she prided herself on maintaining perfect professional boundaries. She never shared personal details with patients, never let their pain bleed into her own life, never took work home, except in the metaphorical sense that all therapists carry their patients' stories somewhere deep in their minds, cataloged and compartmentalized, but never quite forgotten. That's why the Thursday afternoon appointment with patient number 247 felt wrong from the moment the woman walked into her office. Mara's practice was in a converted Victorian house in Portland's Nod Hill neighborhood, the kind of space that was supposed to feel safe and warm. Exposed brick, comfortable furniture, soft lighting. Her office was on the second floor, with windows overlooking the street and a sound machine that provided white noise privacy for her patients. Patient number 247, intake form said her name was Claire Donovan, was 34 years old, slight build, dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She wore jeans and an oversized sweater and looked like 100 other patients Mara had treated over the years. Trauma had a way of making people look smaller, like they were trying to take up less space in the world. "Please, sit anywhere you're comfortable," Mara said, gesturing to the couch or the armchair. Her own chair was positioned at an angle, close enough to feel connected, but far enough to maintain professional distance. Claire chose the couch, perching on the edge like she might need to run at any moment. Classic fight-or-flight presentation. "So, Claire, why don't you tell me what brought you here today?" The woman looked at her hands for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, almost monotone. "I've been having dreams, vivid dreams. They feel more real than being awake." "That's common with trauma," Mara said gently. "Your intake form mentioned you experienced a traumatic event 6 months ago. Would you like to talk about that?" "Not yet. The dreams, they're about someone else, a woman. I see her life, her apartment, her secrets." Claire looked up, and her eyes were unnervingly direct. "I see her standing in her bathroom at 3 in the morning, staring at a bottle of pills, debating. She doesn't take them, but she holds them for 17 minutes. Mara's professional smile faltered. 3 weeks ago, she had stood in her bathroom at 3 in the morning, holding a bottle of sleeping pills, counting them, wondering how many it would take. 17 minutes. She'd timed it on her phone without really meaning to. Some clinical part of her brain documenting her own breakdown. And then she'd put the pills away, splashed water on her face, and gone back to bed. She'd told no one, not her supervisor, not her ex-husband, not the therapist she saw once a month to maintain her own mental health, though she probably should have. Mara cleared her throat. "That's a very specific dream. What do you think it means?" "I don't think it's a dream," Claire said. "I think I'm seeing someone's actual life, someone who needs help but won't admit it, someone who's very good at helping others, but terrible at helping herself." The room felt suddenly smaller. "Claire, it's not uncommon for patients to project their own struggles onto dream figures. The woman you're seeing, she might represent aspects of yourself that you're not ready to face directly. Her apartment has a yellow couch, IKEA. She bought it 5 years ago thinking the bright color would make her feel happier. It didn't work. There's a water stain on the ceiling in the bedroom from when the upstairs neighbor's bathtub leaked. She never got it fixed because she kept thinking she'd move. But she's been there for 8 years now." Mara had a yellow IKEA couch, had bought it 5 years ago for exactly that reason. And yes, there was a water stain on her bedroom ceiling that she'd been meaning to address for 2 years, but kept putting off. "How do you know these things?" Mara's voice came out harder than she intended. "I told you. I see her, in my dreams. Or maybe not dreams, maybe something else." Claire tilted her head, studying Mara with an intensity that was deeply unsettling. "She has a scar on her left shoulder blade from a car accident when she was 19. Her boyfriend was driving. He walked away without a scratch. She spent 6 weeks in physical therapy." Mara stood abruptly. "I think we need to pause for a moment. Claire, have you been following me? Do you know where I live?" "I've never followed you. I've never seen your apartment except in whatever these visions are. This isn't appropriate. I don't know how you got this information, but she feels guilty about her sister. Claire's voice was still quiet, still calm. Her younger sister, Emma. Something happened when they were teenagers. Something she's never told anyone. Something that made Emma. Claire paused. Different, damaged, and she blames herself. Mara felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Emma, God. She hadn't heard her sister's name spoken aloud in months. Hadn't let herself think about what happened that summer when Mara was 17 and Emma was 15. The party. The older boys. Mara leaving Emma alone for just 20 minutes. Just 20 minutes while she went outside with her boyfriend. And when she came back, "Get out," Mara said. "This session is over. Dr. Levin, get out, now." Claire stood slowly, gathered her coat. At the door, she turned back. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help. Because the woman I'm seeing, she's in trouble. She's barely holding on. And I don't know what happens if she stops holding on." The door closed softly behind her. Mara stood in her office, breathing hard, trying to understand what had just happened. Her mind raced through possibilities. Stalker, private investigator, someone from her past trying to mess with her, elaborate prank. But none of those explanations fit. The details were too specific, too private, things no one could know. Unless Claire Donovan was exactly what she claimed to be, someone who was somehow seeing Mara's life, which was insane, psychologically impossible. There was no mechanism by which one person could know another's private moments, their hidden shames, their 3 a.m. breakdowns. Mara pulled up Claire's intake form on her computer. Basic information, all of it likely fabricated now that she thought about it. Phone number, address. Mara tried calling the number. Disconnected. The address was for a building that, when Mara Google mapped it, didn't exist. No emergency contact listed. No previous therapist. No insurance information. She'd paid cash for the intake, which should have been a red flag. Patient number 247 was a ghost. Mara canceled her remaining appointments that day, claiming a migraine. Drove home to her apartment with the yellow couch and the water-stained ceiling. Double-checking her locks, drawing her curtains, she felt violated, exposed, like someone had reached into her mind and pulled out everything she'd worked so hard to keep private. That night, she didn't sleep, sat on her yellow couch, laptop open, searching for Claire Donovan, Portland, Oregon. Nothing useful, too common a name. Searched for any explanation, psychic phenomena, shared consciousness, psychological disorders that might cause one person to know another's private information. Nothing fit. Nothing made sense. At 3 a.m., Mara found herself in the bathroom, looking at the bottle of sleeping pills, not considering taking them, just acknowledging they were there. An escape hatch if things got too unbearable. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Mara answered it without thinking. "You're doing it again." Claire's voice. Standing in the bathroom, looking at the pills. 17 minutes last time. How long tonight? "How are you?" Mara looked around wildly, checking for cameras, for any surveillance equipment. Nothing. "How are you watching me?" "I'm not watching you. I'm seeing you. Inside my head. Your bathroom, your thoughts, your guilt. I see all of it." "That's not possible." "I know, but it's happening anyway." A pause. "Put the pills down, Dr. Levin. You're not going to take them. You never do, but you keep testing yourself. Keep seeing if tonight's the night you'll have the courage. Or maybe you're seeing if tonight's the night the pain gets bad enough that courage won't be necessary." Mara put the pills down. "What do you want from me?" "I want you to help yourself, because I can't watch this anymore. Can't watch you slowly unraveling while you pretend to have everything together. Can't watch you carry this guilt about your sister while you spend your days helping other people process their trauma. Emma, what happened to Emma wasn't my fault. You don't believe that. If you did, you wouldn't be standing in your bathroom at 3 in the morning, counting pills." Mara slid down to sit on the bathroom floor, phone still pressed to her ear. "What happened to my sister was, she went to a party. I was supposed to watch her. I didn't. Something happened. She won't tell me what, but she changed, got depressed, started self-harming. By the time I started therapy school, she'd already been in and out of psychiatric facilities 3 times, and I couldn't help her. My own sister, and I couldn't help her. Because you can't help her while you're drowning in guilt, while you're so busy punishing yourself that you can't actually be present for her. Who are you? Mara whispered. What are you? I told you, I'm someone who sees your life, someone who knows you need help, someone who, Claire's voice caught, someone who might be you. What? The dreams, the visions, they started 6 months ago, right after I had a breakdown, right after I stood in my bathroom looking at pills for 17 minutes, right after I realized I couldn't keep carrying the guilt about my sister anymore. Mara felt ice spreading through her chest. Your sister's name is Emma? Yes. And I was 17 when something happened to her at a party. When I left her alone for 20 minutes. When everything changed and I couldn't fix it. That's not possible. You're describing my life. Or you're describing mine. Dr. Levin, what if we're the same person? What if, I know this sounds insane, but what if you're the part of me that became a therapist, that channeled the guilt into helping others? And I'm the part that broke down, that couldn't maintain the pretense anymore. What if we're both fragments of the same consciousness, split somehow? Mara wanted to dismiss this as delusion, as some kind of shared psychosis or elaborate gaslighting. But the details, the impossible knowledge, the feeling she had sitting on her bathroom floor at 3 a.m., that Claire was speaking a truth that Mara's rational mind refused to accept. Split personalities don't work like that, Mara said, but her voice lacked conviction. Dissociative identity disorder presents differently. I'm not talking about DID. I'm talking about something else. Something that happened 6 months ago. Something traumatic that caused a fracture. Mara tried. 6 months ago would have been March. She'd been working, seeing patients, maintaining her routine. But when she tried to recall specific days, specific moments, she found only vague impressions. Like looking at a photograph that had been left too long in the sun, the details bleached away. There's a gap, Mara admitted. Early March, maybe a week where things feel fuzzy. That's when it happened. That's when we split. When the guilt and trauma became too much for one person to carry. So we became two. You got the functional part, the career, the practice, the ability to help others. I got the breakdown, the acknowledgement of how bad things really were. We're two halves of the same person, Dr. Levin. And I think we need to integrate. This is insane. Is it? You're the trauma specialist. You know about dissociation, about how the mind protects itself by fragmenting, about how people can lose time, create alternate selves, compartmentalize experiences they can't process. What if that's what happened to us? What if the guilt about Emma, the pain of the divorce, the weight of carrying everyone else's trauma, what if it became too much? What if we broke? Mara stood slowly, walked to her bedroom, sat on her bed. The water stain on the ceiling seemed to pulse in the dim light from the street. If what you're saying is true, if we're the same person, then one of us isn't real. One of us is a delusion. Or we're both real, both valid, both necessary. I'm the part of you that admits we need help. You're the part that may, don't you? The pills at 3 a.m., the way you've been canceling appointments, the patient notes you've been forgetting to file, the ex-husband who keeps calling and you keep ignoring, the sister you haven't visited in 3 months. The cracks are showing, Dr. Levin, and I can see them because I'm the part of you that's already acknowledged they're there. Mara wanted to argue, but Claire was right about the canceled appointments, the forgotten paperwork, the avoided phone calls, small failures that had been accumulating, that Mara had been dismissing as stress or fatigue, signs of burnout she'd been trained to recognize in others but couldn't see in herself. What do we do? Mara asked quietly. We integrate. We become one person again, but that means you have to acknowledge the parts of yourself you've been suppressing, the guilt, the pain, the feeling that you failed your sister and you're failing yourself. You have to stop being the perfect therapist and start being the human who needs therapy. I have a therapist, Dr. Reeves. I see her once a month, and you lie to her. Tell her you're fine, that the divorce was amicable, that you're processing things well. You use all your professional training to present as a well-adjusted patient, and she can't see through it because you're too good at the performance. That was true. Mara had been lying to Dr. Reeves, not about everything, but about the severity of her symptoms, the depth of her depression, The 3 a.m. pill counting sessions.
If we integrate, Mara said slowly, what happens to you? Do you just disappear? I don't know, maybe. Or maybe we both disappear and someone new emerges. Someone who's neither the perfect therapist nor the broken patient, but something in between. Someone who can help others because she's learned to help herself. Mara thought about her patients, about the people who trusted her, with their deepest pain, their darkest moments. What would happen to them if she disappeared? If she had to close her practice, admit she needed intensive treatment, step away from the career she'd built. I can't abandon my patients, Mara said. You already are, by pretending to be whole when you're fractured, by giving them half your attention because the other half is focused on maintaining the illusion that you're okay. They deserve better. You deserve better. What do I do? How do we integrate? You start by being honest with yourself, with your actual therapist, with your sister. You stop performing competence and start admitting you need help. And you let this part of yourself exist, not as a separate entity, but as a valid part of who you are. Mara sat in silence for a long moment. Then, will I talk to you again, after integration? I don't know. Maybe I'll just be thoughts, instead of a separate voice. Maybe you'll recognize me as parts of yourself, the guilt, the pain, the acknowledgement of struggle. Or maybe I'll disappear entirely. But either way, Dr. Levin, you'll be more whole than you are now. I'm scared. I know. So am I. But we can't keep existing like this. Split, fractured, pretending. It's not sustainable. You know that. In your professional opinion, what would you tell a patient who is fragmenting this way? Mara smiled grimly. I'd tell them they need immediate intervention, intensive therapy, possibly hospitalization. I'd tell them that dissociation is a protective mechanism, but not a long-term solution. That integration is possible but difficult. That they'd need support. So take your own advice. After the phone call ended, Mara sat on her bed until dawn. Then she did something she hadn't done in 12 years of practice. She called her supervisor and admitted she was in crisis. Dr. Patricia Morrison arrived at Mara's apartment 2 hours later. Listen to the whole story. You're experiencing a psychotic break, Patricia said gently, or possibly a severe dissociative episode. Either way, you need immediate treatment, Mara. This isn't something you can manage on your own. I know. We'll need to contact your patients, arrange coverage for your practice. You'll need to take medical leave, possibly extended leave. I know. And you'll need to be honest with Dr. Reeves. Really honest this time. I know. Patricia squeezed her hand. You spent 12 years taking care of others. It's time to let others take care of you. Over the next days and weeks, Mara dismantled the life she'd built, closed her practice, admitted herself to a psychiatric facility for intensive treatment, started being honest with Dr. Reeves about the depth of her depression, her guilt, her suicidal ideation, started the difficult work of actually processing her trauma instead of using her professional expertise to deflect and perform health. The visions of Claire stopped, or rather, Mara stopped experiencing them as an external voice and started recognizing them as parts of herself. The guilt about Emma, the acknowledgement of pain, the admission that she'd been failing long before she'd been willing to admit it. 3 weeks into treatment, Mara finally called her sister. Emma, it's me. I know I haven't visited in months. I know I've been distant. I need to tell you something. About that night. About the party. About how I failed you. Mara, you didn't. Please let me say this. I've been carrying guilt for 15 years, and that guilt turned me into someone who helps everyone except herself. Someone who fragments rather than feeling. I need to be honest with you. I need to apologize. And I need to start being your sister instead of your therapist. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then, I've been waiting 15 years for you to stop blaming yourself. To stop treating me like a patient you failed, and start treating me like your sister who loves you. Come visit me when you're ready. Really visit. Not performing health, but actually present. I will, I promise. 6 months later, Mara was discharged from the intensive program. Not cured, trauma didn't work that way. But integrated, functioning, able to acknowledge her struggles without fragmenting into separate selves.
She didn't reopen her practice. Instead, she took a position at a community mental health center, working part-time, focusing on clients who couldn't afford traditional therapy. She saw her own therapist weekly, visited Emma regularly, let herself be imperfect.
And she never saw Claire Donovan again, because Claire had never really existed, or rather, had always existed as a part of Mara that needed to be acknowledged. The breakdown, the pain, the acknowledgement that even healers need healing. One evening, almost a year after that Thursday afternoon appointment, Mara found herself looking through her old patient files. Found the intake form for patient number 247, Claire Donovan. The handwriting was hers. The phone number was her own, written backward. The address was an anagram of her apartment building. She'd created Claire, had manifested her own need for help as an external patient because she couldn't admit she was the one who needed therapy. Had given voice to the part of herself she'd been suppressing, the broken, honest, desperate part that knew she was drowning and couldn't maintain the pretense anymore. Mara filed the form away, not as a reminder of psychosis, but as acknowledgement that sometimes the people who need the most help are the ones who spend their lives helping others. That you can't pour from an empty cup, but the therapist sometimes needs therapy. She still had a yellow couch, still had a water stain on her ceiling, still carried guilt about Emma, though it was quieter now, more manageable. She still occasionally found herself in the bathroom at 3 a.m., but not with pills in hand, just with the acknowledgement that some nights were harder than others, and that was okay. The difference was that now Mara knew she didn't have to carry it alone, didn't have to fragment into functional and broken selves. Could be one person, flawed, struggling, healing, instead of pretending to be two. Claire Donovan had been right. They'd needed to integrate, to become one person who could admit she needed help. And that integration had saved Mara's life. The perfect therapist had died in that bathroom at 3 a.m., standing with pills in hand. What emerged in her place was someone more honest, more whole, more human, someone who could help others because she'd finally learned to help herself. And if sometimes, late at night, Mara heard a quiet voice that sounded like Claire's, reminding her to be honest, to be present, to keep integrating, well, that wasn't psychosis. That was just self-awareness. The therapist who'd needed therapy had finally gotten it, and in doing so had become the person she'd always pretended to be, someone genuinely capable of healing, starting with herself.